There is no safe row when a jet engine shatters or a floor collapses at 30,000 feet. We are breaking down 6 brutal cases where passengers were crushed, ejected, or destroyed by mechanical failures. These people died in ways no safety manual could prevent. If you think you're in control when you fly, watch this and realize how fast you can become a statistic. December 28, 1997. The baseline reality of United Airlines Flight 826 is defined by a steady roar. 4 massive engines cut through the freezing Pacific night. The Boeing 747 is cruising comfortably at 31,000 feet. Inside the pressurized cabin, the environment mimics a quiet living room. The air is dry and heavily filtered. The lighting in the economy section is dialed down to a soft amber glow. It is a highly successful illusion of absolute stability. The flight from Tokyo to Honolulu is 2 hours into its journey. Most passengers are slipping into a deep sleep. 32-year-old Monica Neno sits quietly in her assigned seat. She is deeply immersed in the familiar comfort of long-haul travel. Her mind is entirely relaxed, focused purely on her upcoming Hawaiian vacation. Above her head, the seatbelt sign is completely dark. The thick fabric lap belt rests entirely unbuckled beside her hip. This is the established norm of commercial flight comfort. The system quietly signals to the passengers that they are perfectly safe. It masks the terrifying reality of their situation. They are hurtling through a hostile atmosphere at 600 miles per hour. The massive jet relies on a continuous flow of high-speed air over its wings to generate lift. But the upper atmosphere is never a static canvas. It is a volatile, constantly shifting ocean of air. Miles ahead of the aircraft, an invisible threat is forming. It is a phenomenon known as clear air turbulence. There are no storm clouds to visually warn the flight crew. There is zero moisture to trigger the weather radar. The threat is completely invisible to human eyes. 2 massive streams of air are violently colliding in the pitch-black sky. They are moving at drastically different speeds. This creates massive, swirling eddies of wind. It acts exactly like a sudden trapdoor in the sky. The heavy aircraft approaches this invisible cliff at full cruising speed. Inside the darkened cockpit, the instruments show perfectly normal parameters. Back in the cabin, Monica rests her head softly against the seat. The unfastened metal buckle faintly reflects the dim overhead light. Then, the invisible collision finally occurs. The Boeing 747 punches violently straight into the atmospheric void. The smooth airflow over the wings instantly detaches. The airplane completely loses its primary source of aerodynamic lift. What happens next unfolds in less than 2 seconds. But for the helpless passengers, chronological time brutally slows down. The nose of the massive jet drops with terrifying speed. The aircraft violently plunges 100 feet in a single heartbeat. It is an instantaneous transition from stable flight to a terrifying freefall. The fundamental physics of the enclosed cabin instantly invert. Gravity temporarily vanishes. Anything not bolted to the floor becomes a deadly projectile. Monica has absolutely no time to react. Her brain cannot process the sudden loss of gravity. Because her seatbelt is open, she is completely unanchored. The floor falls completely away from beneath her feet. She transforms into a living projectile caught in a vertical trajectory. She is thrown upward with immense, unstoppable kinetic force. The short distance to the ceiling closes in mere milliseconds. The fragile human body is not built to withstand unyielding impacts. Her upward flight abruptly ends against the rigid plastic and metal roof. The physical collision is absolute and completely devastating. The raw kinetic energy transfers directly through the top of her skull. The medical outcome is clinical, immediate, and entirely irreversible. She sustains fatal blunt force trauma to the head. The extreme force of the impact is insurmountable. The severe impact instantly causes a total loss of consciousness. Critical neurological functions permanently cease operating within seconds. Cardiac arrest inevitably follows. It is a non-survivable injury. The brutal suddenness leaves absolutely no room for medical intervention. She is completely gone before the aircraft regains its stability. The desperate pilots wrestle the heavy plane out of the turbulent void. Gravity violently reasserts its grip inside the cabin. People and heavy luggage crash brutally back down to the floor. The eerie silence of the void is instantly replaced by chaotic screaming. Yellow oxygen masks dangle uselessly from the shattered ceiling panels. But in Monica's specific row, there is only a heavy stillness. The damaged flight is forced to immediately turn back to Tokyo. The steady hum of the engines continues. The machines are completely indifferent to the human tragedy inside. The heavy metal seatbelt buckle rests quietly on the empty cushion. It is a cold, silent artifact of a fatal choice. The unfastened belt remains perfectly intact. It was a simple device engineered to save a life. Now it stands as a grim reminder of human fragility against the violent laws of physics. November 21, 1992. The mobile boarding stair is a heavy piece of ground support equipment. It is a massive steel structure mounted on a wheeled chassis. It weighs over 4,000 pounds. Its singular purpose is to perfectly bridge the vertical gap between an aircraft door and the tarmac. When properly locked, it feels like a permanent concrete building. It represents the entirely mundane transition between flight and solid ground. On this chilly morning, this standard equipment rests against the forward door of a commercial airliner. The process of deplaning is a universally practiced routine. It is boring, repetitive, and built entirely on an assumption of absolute safety. Passengers mindlessly shuffle forward, trusting the airport infrastructure completely. Mark Dennis stands quietly in the crowded aisle. He is patiently waiting for his turn to exit. His internal focus is purely on the upcoming day. He thinks about retrieving his luggage from the busy carousel. The physical mechanics of stepping off the airplane do not cross his mind. Walking downstairs is a deeply automated human motor function. It requires absolutely zero conscious thought. Mark finally reaches the open doorway of the aircraft. The cold wind aggressively brushes against his face. The loud ambient noise of the busy airport surrounds him. He looks out over the gray expanse of the tarmac. The heavy metal air stair is perfectly positioned just inches below the door sill. It is the designated path to safety, but an airport apron is never a static environment. It is a highly dynamic industrial danger zone masquerading as a parking lot. Hundreds of feet away, another commercial jet is preparing to taxi. The pilot heavily pushes the aircraft throttle forward. The massive turbofan engines instantly spool up with a deafening whine. This routine action triggers a deadly invisible mechanism known as jet blast. A jet engine violently forces ignited air out the exhaust at hurricane speeds. The resulting thrust creates a massive, invisible tornado. This extreme wind violently expands across the flat concrete. Today, a chaotic alignment of wind direction and engine power creates a deadly anomaly. A highly concentrated gust of jet blast sweeps violently across the tarmac. It hits the mobile boarding stair parked exactly at Mark's aircraft. The heavy metal structure acts exactly like a giant mechanical sail. The locking brakes on the wheels are utterly insufficient. They cannot hold against this sudden, massive lateral force. The immense wind overpowers the mechanical friction. The entire steel staircase is violently shoved away from the aluminum fuselage. It is pushed forcefully outward. This creates a massive gap between the cabin door and the top step. This catastrophic structural separation happens in absolute silence beneath the roaring engines. Mark is completely unaware of the sudden shift. His brain has already calculated the short distance to the first step. He confidently commits his entire body weight forward. He raises his right foot to step down onto the solid metal tread. But the cold metal is simply no longer there. The safety net has been violently erased by invisible air. Mark steps aggressively into the empty void. What follows is a horrific intersection of human assumption and raw physics. Time brutally slows down as his descending foot finds absolutely no resistance. Biological panic sets in instantly. His internal vestibular system immediately detects the catastrophic lack of solid ground. A powerful surge of adrenaline floods his bloodstream. His arms instinctively flail outward in a desperate attempt to grab onto something solid. His fingers frantically brush against the smooth aluminum frame of the door. But there is absolutely no physical grip to be found. The fundamental force of gravity takes absolute control of his mass. He falls backward from the height of a second-story balcony. The vertical distance to the hard ground is roughly 18 feet. It is a short distance, but it takes nearly a full, agonizing second to cross. The gray, unforgiving concrete of the apron races upward to rapidly meet him. Human biology is incredibly fragile when abruptly subjected to rapid deceleration. The unyielding surface of the tarmac offers zero physical forgiveness. The physical impact is instantaneous and completely devastating. The raw kinetic energy must be absorbed by his fragile skeletal structure. His body heavily strikes the solid concrete with immense force. The sudden stop immediately compromises his internal structural integrity. He sustains massive, fatal blunt force trauma across his torso and cranium. The extreme kinetic transfer instantly overwhelms his physical structure. A total loss of consciousness instantly occurs upon striking the cold ground. Catastrophic internal injuries quickly lead to complete cardiovascular collapse. The heart muscle abruptly ceases to function. It is a fatal injury executed with the cold precision of simple gravity. Ground crew members sprint desperately toward the horrific scene. Emergency sirens begin to wail in the far distance. But their rapid response is completely futile against the cold finality of physics. Mark lies completely motionless on the freezing concrete. He is surrounded by the chaotic noise of roaring jet engines. High above him, the open aircraft door gapes like a black, empty mouth. The heavy steel boarding stair sits several feet away, completely intact. Its massive rubber wheels quietly rest exactly where the powerful wind left them. The metal steps remain perfectly aligned. They are solidly waiting for a passenger who will never descend. July 6, 1996. The routine process of a commercial takeoff completely masks the immense physical forces required to lift a heavy metal tube into the sky. An MD-88 aircraft sits at the start of the departure strip in Pensacola. The heavy tarmac radiates intense summer heat. Inside the pressurized cabin, the environment is perfectly controlled. The air conditioning hums to fight the oppressive humidity. It is a completely standard start to Delta Airlines Flight 1288. 39-year-old Anita Lurie sits quietly in seat 37A. She is in the very back of the aircraft. Her seat is directly next to the thick window. She stares out at the flat concrete runway. Her mind is focused on reaching Atlanta. She casually waits for the familiar push of acceleration. She is surrounded by passengers, engaging in quiet conversations. The system silently promises an uneventful journey. But the mechanical reality of a jet airliner is fundamentally violent. The MD-88 is uniquely designed. Its two massive jet engines are mounted directly on the rear fuselage. They sit just inches away from the outer aluminum skin of row 37. To generate thrust, thousands of internal metal components must operate flawlessly. The front compressor fan is built from solid titanium. It spins at thousands of revolutions per minute. Deep inside the left engine's titanium hub, a microscopic anomaly exists. A tiny invisible crack has been secretly growing inside the dense metal. It is a fatal manufacturing flaw. It is completely invisible to routine visual inspections. The flight is finally cleared for immediate takeoff. The pilot pushes the throttles to their maximum forward position. The massive jet engines instantly respond. The low hum transforms into a high-pitched roar. The airplane begins to rapidly accelerate down the concrete runway. The heavy vibration of the landing gear shakes the cabin floor. Anita rests her head comfortably against the plastic wall molding. The spinning titanium hub reaches its absolute maximum physical limit. The invisible crack finally surrenders to the immense centrifugal force. The solid metal hub violently shatters into several heavy fragments. This catastrophic mechanical failure happens in a fraction of a millisecond. A massive chunk of heavy titanium is aggressively ejected sideways. It instantly transforms into an unguided artillery shell. It travels at a terrifying supersonic speed. Chronological time brutally slows down, but the titanium shrapnel moves far too fast for the human eye. It violently strikes the external aluminum skin of the fuselage. The reinforced metal offers zero resistance against this extreme kinetic energy. The shrapnel easily punches a massive hole straight through the cabin wall. It enters the interior space exactly at the precise physical coordinates of seat 37A. The massive transfer of kinetic energy is absolute and completely unstoppable. It strikes her head with immense kinetic force. The mechanical violence completely bypasses any human reflex. The medical outcome is clinical, immediate, and entirely irreversible. She sustains fatal blunt force trauma to the cranium. The physical impact immediately compromises her structural integrity. A total loss of consciousness occurs instantaneously. The primary neurological center abruptly ceases all electrical activity. Total cardiovascular collapse immediately follows. It is a non-survivable physical event. The precise geometry of this mechanical strike is terrifying. The passenger seated directly to her right does not receive a single scratch. The person sitting directly in front of her is untouched. The heavy piece of titanium instantly expends its kinetic energy. It drops heavily to the carpeted floor. The flight crew immediately senses the violent explosion. The pilots instantly initiate a high-speed aborted takeoff sequence. They slam on the heavy mechanical brakes. The massive airplane shudders violently. The tires scream and generate thick white smoke against the asphalt. The aircraft finally grinds to a complete halt on the runway. The deafening roar of the destroyed left engine is instantly replaced by metallic silence. Then the chaotic screaming of terrified passengers fills the cabin. A jagged hole now exists in the side of the airplane. Bright afternoon sunlight streams through the torn aluminum edges. The piece of heated titanium rests quietly near the empty seats. It is a cold artifact of an invisible mechanical failure. It simply followed the blind laws of physics to its final resting place. April 28, 1988. 58-year-old Clarabelle Lansing is comfortably executing her highly practiced daily routine as a veteran flight attendant. Aloha Airlines Flight 243 is cruising at an altitude of 24,000 feet. The Boeing 737 is making a routine hop from Hilo to Honolulu. Inside the pressurized cabin, the environment is artificially sustained. Mechanical compressors pump warm, breathable air into the sealed metal tube. This counteracts the deadly -40-degree temperature raging outside. The smell of roasted coffee fills the narrow aisle. She slowly walks down the carpeted center aisle near row 5. She gracefully balances against the slight vibrations of the aircraft. She warmly hands a plastic cup of soda to a seated passenger. Her focus is purely on completing the beverage service. She feels entirely safe inside the familiar aluminum walls. But an airplane cabin is fundamentally a massive metal balloon. It is constantly inflated with high internal pressure to keep the passengers breathing safely. The outside atmosphere is critically thin and hostile to human biology. Every single time the plane climbs and descends, this metal balloon expands and contracts. This constant breathing of the rigid metal creates deep, microscopic stress. This specific aircraft has endured over 89,000 flight cycles. It has spent 19 years endlessly flying short island routes. The salty, humid ocean air of Hawaii has relentlessly attacked the hidden aluminum structure. The metal holding the upper roof together has become fatally fatigued. Tiny cracks have quietly linked together along the overlapping fuselage seams. The structural integrity of the aircraft is entirely compromised. It is a latent threat waiting for the exact breaking point. At 1:48 p.m., the critical physical limit is finally breached. A small piece of the upper left fuselage violently gives way. The high-pressure air contained inside the cabin aggressively seeks the low-pressure void outside. This sudden equalization is known as explosive decompression. It does not happen slowly or gently. It is a violent, instantaneous mechanical failure. The escaping air acts with unimaginable physical force. A massive 18-foot section of the cabin roof is instantly ripped away. It is aggressively blown out into the freezing sky. The deafening roar of a hurricane immediately fills the exposed cabin. The ambient temperature instantly drops to below freezing. A thick fog materializes as the cabin moisture condenses. Clarabelle is standing completely exposed directly in the center of the aisle. She has absolutely nothing solid to hold on to. She is completely unanchored to the floor. The sudden pressure differential acts exactly like a massive vacuum. The sheer physical force of the rapidly escaping air is mathematically overwhelming. It violently lifts her entire body completely off the carpeted floor. She is instantly ejected upward and forcefully outward through the massive hole. The fragile human body cannot fight a supersonic pressure wave. She is aggressively thrown directly into the freezing, thin atmosphere. The surrounding slipstream is moving at over 300 miles per hour. The biological and physical consequences are absolute and devastating. The extreme altitude and lack of breathable oxygen guarantee a rapid biological shutdown. A complete loss of consciousness occurs in mere seconds due to massive hypoxia. The extreme kinetic forces of the high-speed aerodynamic slipstream completely overwhelm the human skeletal frame. It is a fatal, non-survivable physical displacement. She is violently swallowed by the vast, empty sky in a single second. Inside the shaking airplane, chronological time stretches into an agonizing nightmare. The surviving pilots desperately dive the crippled airplane toward breathable ground. The deafening wind violently screams through the exposed passenger cabin. Loose debris flutters out into the endless blue ocean far below. The surviving passengers sit completely frozen in absolute terror. They are securely strapped to their heavy seats by their thick lap belts. They stare up at the clear blue sky where the ceiling used to be. Clarabelle is completely gone. She leaves behind absolutely no physical trace in the ruined cabin. A half-filled plastic cup of dark soda spills quietly onto the vibrating floor. It is the only silent artifact of her suddenly interrupted routine. The torn aluminum edges of the remaining roof aggressively flap in the heavy wind. The cold laws of physics took exactly what they demanded. They ruthlessly exploited a microscopic weakness in the metal. The massive jet engines continue their loud, steady whine. They push the damaged aircraft forward, leaving only a massive void in the cold air behind them. October 14, 1999. The tarmac at Narita International Airport is loud and smells heavily of aviation fuel. A massive Boeing 767 sits ready for departure. Ground crews rush through their final checks in the cool autumn air. They do not look inside the dark, cavernous space of the rear landing gear wheel well. An unidentified man is quietly hiding inside this unlit mechanical cave. He is a desperate stowaway seeking a free passage across the ocean. He sits nervously on a narrow aluminum ledge directly above the massive rubber tires. The surrounding space currently feels like a small metal room. He expects a bitterly cold and uncomfortable journey. People often hear stories of stowaways freezing at high altitudes, but his understanding of aviation engineering is fatally flawed. A modern commercial aircraft is a tightly packed machine. It is designed with absolutely zero wasted internal volume. The wheel well is not an empty passenger compartment. It is a highly precise mold explicitly designed to house the landing gear. To reduce drag during flight, the wheels must be perfectly folded into the fuselage. There is absolutely no extra physical clearance for a human body. The heavy aircraft is finally cleared for immediate departure. The massive turbofan engines roar to life with a deafening whine. The Boeing 767 rapidly accelerates down the long concrete runway. It lifts its heavy nose and smoothly climbs into the dark sky. The violent vibration of the runway instantly stops. The stowaway breathes a brief sigh of relief in the dark, but up inside the illuminated cockpit, the pilot executes a completely standard procedure. He simply reaches forward and pulls the landing gear lever upward. This simple human motion instantly activates a terrifying automated sequence. Powerful pumps push highly pressurized hydraulic fluid through thick metal lines. The system generates an immense, absolutely unstoppable force. The heavy metal doors beneath the stowaway suddenly swing open. The freezing night air aggressively rushes into the confined space. Then the multi-ton steel landing gear assembly begins to heavily swing upward. Chronological time brutally slows down inside the dark cavity. The massive tires and thick steel struts rise directly toward the hiding man. The seemingly spacious metal room aggressively begins to shrink. The mechanical movement is not particularly fast, but it is mathematically absolute. The heavy machinery cannot feel pity. It cannot be reasoned with. The stowaway desperately presses his back against the curved aluminum ceiling. He frantically tries to shrink his physical mass into the smallest possible shape, but there is simply nowhere left to safely go. The massive steel assembly relentlessly continues its automated upward swing. It is driven by raw hydraulic power that can easily bend solid iron beams. The fragile human skeletal structure cannot compete with industrial machinery. The heavy tires and steel struts forcefully close the final few inches of space. The physical intersection of soft human tissue and heavy machinery is absolute. The medical outcome is clinical, immediate, and entirely irreversible. The man sustains fatal, catastrophic mechanical compression. His primary skeletal structure is instantly compromised by the extreme hydraulic pressure. The massive physical pressure immediately overwhelms his biological limits. A total loss of consciousness occurs in a fraction of a single second. Catastrophic internal injuries quickly lead to complete cardiovascular collapse. The primary heart muscle abruptly ceases to function under the immense load. It is a strictly mechanical death. It is perfectly executed with the cold precision of an automated sequence. The heavy metal landing gear doors forcefully snap shut. They perfectly seal the aerodynamic underbelly of the aircraft. The Boeing 767 smoothly continues its steep climb into the upper atmosphere. The pilots remain entirely unaware of the fatal interaction below their feet. The dashboard indicator safely lights up green. It calmly confirms that the landing gear is securely locked. The powerful hydraulic pumps quietly shut down. The massive aircraft simply flies forward into the dark night. It leaves behind an empty runway, blindly carrying a lifeless, silent artifact firmly locked inside its metal belly. February 24, 1989. 24-year-old Lee Campbell is peacefully sleeping in row 9, reclined in his heavily cushioned business class seat. United Airlines Flight 811, a massive Boeing 747, is steadily climbing through the pitch-black sky. The aircraft has just passed 22,000 feet after leaving Honolulu. Inside the spacious business class cabin, the environment is engineered for total relaxation. The lighting is dimmed to a soft, sleep-inducing glow. The thick carpet absorbs the heavy vibrations of the 4 turbofan engines. His mind is focused purely on catching a few hours of quiet sleep. He feels entirely secure. The floor beneath his feet feels exactly like the solid foundation of a permanent building. This is the ultimate illusion of commercial aviation. The passengers are actually sitting directly over a massive, hollow cavern. The lower deck of the Boeing 747 is an expansive cargo hold. The only barrier separating the pressurized cabin from the deadly outside atmosphere is the thin aluminum skin. The right side of the cargo hold features a massive metal door. To prevent this heavy door from blowing open, it relies on a series of locking pins. These small aluminum sectors anchor the door to the thick fuselage frame. But an invisible flaw exists deep within the electrical wiring. A short circuit has silently activated the unlatching mechanism mid-flight. The locking pins are improperly positioned. The heavy cargo door is now fundamentally compromised. It is fighting a losing battle against the expanding pressure of the sealed cabin. At exactly 2:09 a.m., the tiny aluminum locking sectors finally shatter under the extreme physical load. The heavy cargo door violently detaches from its massive hinges. It is aggressively blown outward into the freezing night sky. This triggers an instantaneous, catastrophic chain reaction. The sudden loss of the door creates a massive hole in the lower fuselage. The high-pressure air contained inside the passenger cabin seeks the low-pressure void outside. This violent equalization is known as explosive decompression. The physical force generated by this rapidly escaping air is mathematically incomprehensible. The thin metal beams supporting the business class floor are not designed to withstand a massive downward pressure wave. The structural integrity of the cabin floor instantly and violently fails. Chronological time brutally slows down for the terrified passengers. A massive room-sized section of the carpeted floor directly beneath row 9 completely collapses. The solid foundation simply vanishes into the dark cargo hold. Lee is violently awakened by a deafening, explosive roar. He has absolutely no time to mentally process the sudden architectural failure. His heavy passenger seat is violently ripped entirely off its bolted metal tracks. The sudden, extreme pressure differential acts exactly like a massive vacuum. The sheer physical force of the escaping air aggressively pulls the heavy seat. Lee is still securely strapped inside as he is dragged toward the gaping hole. He is violently swallowed by the massive empty void in a fraction of a single second. He is forcefully ejected from the brightly lit cabin into the freezing atmosphere. The fragile human body cannot survive this extreme sequence of mechanical violence. The surrounding aerodynamic slipstream is moving at hundreds of miles per hour. The medical outcome is clinical, immediate, and entirely irreversible. The massive transfer of raw kinetic energy during the violent ejection instantly compromises his structural integrity. He sustains a fatal, catastrophic physical trauma during the rapid decompression. A total loss of consciousness occurs instantaneously due to the extreme kinetic transfer. Total cardiovascular collapse immediately follows. It is a fatal, completely non-survivable physical displacement. He falls silently into the vast, dark expanse of the freezing Pacific Ocean. Inside the violently shaking airplane, a hurricane of cold winds screams through the ruined cabin. The surviving pilots desperately wrestle with the heavy flight controls. They aggressively dive the crippled aircraft toward breathable air. The surviving passengers in business class sit frozen in absolute terror. They tightly grip their armrests and stare down in horror. Where a solid, carpeted floor existed just seconds ago, there is now only a dark abyss. They are looking directly out into the unforgiving night sky. The heavy metal tracks that once held row 9 are violently twisted. They are completely sheared off. They remain as the only silent artifacts of the seats that were violently erased. We look at these deaths as freak accidents, but they were mostly design flaws and human error. Now be honest, do you actually believe your life is worth more to an airline than their quarterly profits? If an airline offered you a flight that was 50% cheaper but had a higher risk of incidents, would you take the deal? Give me your honest answer below. Like and sub if you value logic over comfort.